All right, looks like I am live here. Let's see. If you were expecting Sidgard and Hillman today, as we announced in our email, then you will be in for an unpleasant surprise, which is that he couldn't make it today. We had a scheduling conflict, actually a miscommunication, where we thought this was going to work for both of us. Turned out that he had a prior engagement at this time after the email had gone out. So I figured it'd be easier just to do it rather than to send an email around to cancel it and try to have people show up at different times. So that's the plan now. What I'm going to do, though, is if there are live questions here, or even some of the pre-submitted ones that are specifically for Sid, because remember, he's the one who is the registered dietitian. I'm sorry, certified nutritionist. I am not that. I am just a guy who blogs and podcasts and writes books and things. But he's more used to dealing with one-on-one clients, answering specific questions. So he's great to have on these nutrition calls. So I will give you my 2 cents for any of these questions. But when there are questions that might be better for Sid to answer, I will certainly acknowledge that and pass along the questions to him. And then either we can find, if you're that interested, you could put your email address. I don't know that I'd recommend it, but you can put your email address in the chat here, and I can pass this question directly on for you. Or we can just, if you don't do that, I will just kind of make that question not marked as answered yet. And the next time he's on with me, we'll get his take as well. So that said, if you are here live, then by all means, jump in with questions whenever you've got them, or comments, or anything else. These afternoon sessions aren't typically too crowded, so they are a great chance to get your question answered without having to wait too long, which is part of the reason we like to do them now and then, just to change up the time zones for different people. So by all means, submit your question live if you are here, or questions live. You don't need to worry about interrupting me or anything like that. I'm just going to be starting with the pre-submitted questions that we have, and I think we have about 4 of them today. So I'll start running through those, and if you're here, just go ahead and jump in with whatever questions you might have. So let's see. Beginning with Nancy, who says, I'm going all in on the weight loss plan February 1st, which is 2 days from now, so good timing. As far as serving sizes, my husband thinks he should have more food. I guess it's more food than me, since he's bigger than me. And if there's some truth to that, a serving size on the plan would be for what size person? So that is a really good question. And it is one that I think would be very important in other sort of diet weight loss programs. Health and Simple is not that. Health and Simple, or any of the 7-day plans that are in the academy, they are not that way, because Sid and I both don't really think that's the most effective way to eat. Maybe in certain kind of extreme circumstances, portion control is needed. And I know this isn't like a universally accepted thing. People argue about this all the time. Sid's and my take is that you probably don't need to worry about portions, that when you start eating healthily, when you are eating food that is whole and not refined and not calorically dense, because it's whole plant foods, and whole plant foods aren't very calorically dense. In fact, they are calorically sparse, I guess you might say. There's lots of nutrients in there, but those nutrients take up relatively large amounts of room in your stomach, right? So to eat, you can imagine eating to eat 500 calories of lettuce, you would have to be so full to do that, right? So because lettuce doesn't pack a lot of calories, you have to put more than would even fit into your stomach to do that. Whereas if you think about eating cheese or something, you can eat a little piece of it and you get that many calories. So that's the difference between calorically dense and not. So if you were making choices, and that oil is a kind of a hot topic, of course, in this vegan and whole food space. I should say plant-based, I guess, to kind of get the ethical connotation out of it for this discussion. If you're eating tons and tons of oil, then yeah, I mean, you could eat way too many French fries, right? It's easy to overeat French fries because they're packing in lots of calories because they're cooked in oil. But when we say whole foods, we're typically meaning without a lot of added oil. We don't take a hardline approach that says you can never have any. Some people do. But for the most part, our recipes are pretty light in added oils and things like that because they are very high in calories per even amount of space. So the point is, if your diet is mostly whole foods, mostly not that calorically dense whole foods, then you shouldn't need portion control. Your body is going to be your portion control mechanism because it will tell you that you are full. this might take a little while to adjust to. If you're used to eating in different ways, then it just might take a little while for you to kind of calibrate and get used to that. And that is totally fine. That's why we don't say to come into this program with, expectations of losing 10 pounds in the first week or anything like that. Like that, it's just really not the point. There are better programs if that is the goal, to lose as much weight as you possibly can immediately. That's not really what our approach is about. Our approach is much more the long term, and hoping that by working to build habits that are actually enjoyable and sustainable, that it might take a little longer to get to that goal weight, but you're going to be there and stay there. You're going to keep moving towards it for years and years probably until you are finally just right where you need to be. So anyway, you shouldn't need to worry about first. If you guys are different sizes, your bodies are going to probably tell you, especially after a few weeks of doing this, tell you exactly how much to eat, because you'll know because you're full. It's good to be mindful of that stuff. I don't really encourage you to try to, get up from the table when you're still hungry, but you can be mindful enough to know that as you start to just pay more attention, start to not have the TV on while you eat, start to, just be doing less things, just mostly just eating and kind of interacting with people while you are eating, because as you do that, you will start to become more mindful. And meditation and that kind of stuff is also really great for improving mindfulness. But that will start to help you kind of notice, and you'll find yourself picking up your fork to take another bite, and you can say, wait a minute, I'm actually not hungry. I'm just doing this because my plate isn't empty yet. In some people's cases, because the show isn't over yet, right? So you keep eating until there's some visual cue that tells you to stop. Instead, you can shift that to more of a cue that is more of a sensory cue in your body. You can feel it. And you can say, I'm just going to stop because I'm at the point where I'm full now. And then when you get hungry again, it might be only 3 hours later, you eat a snack, because that's how this kind of food works, right? It's not that calorically dense, so you digest it pretty quickly, and then you're hungry again. And neither Sid nor I think you should deprive yourself or try to starve yourself and go too long between meals. We both like the intermittent fasting idea, but I don't think at the beginning that's not the point. And even if it is, that wouldn't say you don't snack between meals. That would just sort of say you don't eat after dinner and before breakfast, and you kind of try to extend that window as much as you possibly can. So anyway, the answer to portion control is on this program with this type of food, don't worry about it. If you do this for a long time and you're not getting anywhere, then maybe I could be convinced that you should try it. But I think Sid would probably feel more strongly than I do even that portion control is not necessary and not encouraged on this program. Okay, good one. Let's see, the next one we've got is from Brian. He says, pans, nonstick versus stainless steel versus ceramic. So long as we are trying to be healthy, do we worry about the toxins on the nonstick pans? This is a very good question, Brian, and it's a good question to be asking because, 15 years ago or 20 years ago, very few people were asking that kind of question, and we didn't ask about plastics or anything. We just kind of subjected our food to all kinds of things that might be bad. And in fact, I still have some plastic, a plastic ladle that I dip in soups and stews now and then. And only recently has it occurred to me, wow, what am I doing when I dip this into boiling water? How much of that plastic is leaching into my food? So anyway, we've kind of made the transition away from a lot of that stuff. And 2 years ago, we bought pans, got rid of the non-stick ones that we had for, 10 years before that, and got stainless steel ones, which are wonderful as far as how they perform anyway. So anyway, I'm kind of coming to this space just as you are. So anyway, it seems that people a few years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, were totally anti-non-stick. And I am Googling right now just to see if I can point you in some sort of intelligent direction. Because although it seemed to be the fashionable thing to assume that non-stick pans were totally unhealthy for you, then it turned out I saw something, I forget when exactly it was, but it was a year ago or so. That was kind of saying if you didn't do crazy stuff superheat your pans, you treated them pretty well and you cooked it normal temperatures, that actually it might not be as bad as everyone was concerned. So I don't know. I don't know the answer. I would have to do much more research to really make a decision. To me, it seems like the easy thing to do. I've loved our stainless steel ones. I don't have problems with sticking very much. It's just, I don't know. I don't know how you have to cook or how. I'm sure there are certain dishes that are much, much harder to do in a stainless steel pan than a true good non-stick one. but I just don't think most people are eating that way. Like these have been totally versatile. These stainless steel ones I have, and they're nothing special. They're I believe they're made by KitchenAid is what I want to say. I'll try to find the name of them precisely while I'm talking here. But anyway, they've been wonderful, and they've been so easy to clean compared to what we had was nonstick before that got all scratched up from years of use with metal utensils and not really caring for them all that well. Which who knows what that did for the health benefits, the health hazards of them, right? If we kind of break the nonstick surface and open it up. But anyway, I feel like those, even though they were nonstick, because they scratched so easily and because they just got so worn, that eventually they were worse than just good smooth non-steel pans because they had all this texture along the surface now that made food stick. So anyway, we should ask Sid about that. My guess is he's pretty much a natural, 100% natural sort of guy. So my guess is he would not be in favor of non-stick pans. But I don't know for sure. I'll be interested to ask him that next time. Anyway, you can look. I'm just as I Google that, there are sites that mention all different brands that are supposedly nonstick but are healthier and more natural versions of them. So you can look if that's really important to you. You can probably find them. But I'd look at stainless steel. The thing is, I mean, like even when you get to the point of metals, then the question is how much metals are going into food. And you wouldn't want any sort of like aluminum cookware. I don't know if that's a really popular thing, but I know it exists. So I mean, you also don't want these heavy metals getting into your food. So it's a difficult thing. I don't know the answer. I haven't looked into it all that much. There's a company called, I believe it's called Salad Master, which is a weird name for a company, but they make cookware very, very expensive. It's like, I just Googled it, and $2,200 for a set. Maybe you can get much more than that, I believe. Their claims that they're the absolute healthiest, and with that, you need no oil at all, and they kind of half steam the food, and they do this really interesting, innovative sort of way of cooking. So that's something to look into if you've got the budget for it. But I don't know that that's what you need to do necessarily. Okay, good question there, Brian. Let me pull up the next one. All right, next one is from Lisa. Reminder, if you were here live, of course, jump in with questions. I'm just reading and answering the pre-submitted ones that people send in ahead of time. Also, just to bring anyone up to speed who is just joining us, Sid could not make it during this time. We had a miscommunication about the scheduling. So when I sent the email out about this that said it was at this time, then he responded and told me that he actually couldn't do this time as I thought he could. So anyway, he's not here, but he will be back again next time. And if there are questions that are specifically better for him as the certified nutritionist to handle, I will make sure to pass those along to him. You can leave your email address if you want to. You could also just put it in the pre-submitted link, which you should see in the email where we announce this Q&A. You can put it there as well, and then it'll be on the list for next time, and I can make sure he sees it and answers it. But I'll do my best, and Sid and I do tend to agree on most things. We just have different sort of areas of knowledge and expertise, so having us both on kind of guarantees a better answer between the two of us. All right, this one's from Lisa, who says, oh, and by the way, so jump in if you're here live with your own question at any time. You don't need to wait for me to finish these or anything. Lisa says, is there a range in macronutrient ratios you would recommend? I'm looking to lose weight and am moderately active, run 3 miles 2 to 3 days a week, plus 1 long run a week, working up to a half marathon, and do a weight circuit twice a week. So that to me is a pretty typical sort of, fairly active person's workout schedule, right? Where you do a couple runs a week, you do a longer one on the weekend, any kind of workout on the weekend, and then some sort of weight routine. So, half marathon, I think a lot of people are kind of in that level of activity boat. So, good question. Is there a range in macronutrient ratios? My guess is that Sid would say you don't need to think about that at all. And I think that is a totally valid point. That is a valid viewpoint, I should say. There are a lot of people, very, very competitive athletes, who eat extremely different, varied diets from each other and, perform well. So you find fruitarian people like Michael Arnstein who can run 100 miles or has run 100 miles in under like 12 hours. I mean, just incredible times. I don't know what the mile pace was, but it was very, very fast, 7:30 or something. So And he's just all raw fruits and vegetables, no nuts and seeds, even no oils, of course, no animal products, obviously. So like, and he's eating 80% carbohydrate, 10% protein, 10% fat. You can find paleo types. You find another good example, the ketogenic diet thing. I don't know exactly what those ratios are, but those are much, much higher in protein. And some of them, the ones actually that I like better, I'm sorry, they are much, much higher in fat. Some versions of that I actually think are the better versions of that are pretty low in protein for the fat. Other ones are high in protein and high in fat. And then you're kind of getting closer to a paleo approach. But you see good athletes in all different types of sports doing all these different diets. So as far as short-term sports performance, I don't think there's a whole lot of evidence that we can say this diet is better hands down than this one. So follow the guidelines of your sport, I think is the best advice I can give. And when it comes to running, when it comes to sort of general endurance sports, my approach kind of came from Chris Carmichael, who was Lance Armstrong's coach back in the good days of Lance Armstrong. He wrote a book called, I think it was called Eat Right to Train Right, or Food for Fitness. One of those was the title, one with the subtitle. But a very good book. And in that, he recommended the diet that I tend to kind of still roughly stick to, and I don't try to stick to it. It's just what I eat. And if I were to measure, I would come out somewhere in this range. Around 65% of my calories come from carbohydrates. Probably a little bit more than that if I'm in some sort of heavy training cycle, which has been a while since I've been doing anything like that. But that's 65% carbohydrate. Fat is in the 20% range, and then you're left with whatever is left, 15% protein or so. That fat amount could creep higher, or the carbohydrate amount could creep higher, up to where you're only taking in maybe 12% of your calories from protein. Most athletes, talk vegan sort of pro athlete or vegan elite athletes, I should say, will tell you that they are in that 12 to 15% of calories from protein range. And then the rest, of course, is made up of carbohydrate and fat. And it just kind of depends where you want to be. Another very popular ratio is 70-15-15. I mentioned 80-10-10. That was Michael Arnstein's and the whole fruitarian movement, where it's 80% carbohydrate and then 10% each of fat and protein. 70-15-15, of course, 70% carbohydrate and then 15% of fat and 15% protein. That feels like a little bit more kind of balanced. I don't know that balance is what we're necessarily striving for, but it just gets you closer to what more mainstream nutritionists will recommend. So it kind of depends on your own risk profile, I guess, and also what you like and what makes you feel good. So 70-15-15 is a nice thing to kind of aim for if you like that. I still kind of think a little bit higher fat than 15% is a good thing, especially in the long term. But I don't really know that for sure. And there are a lot of the vegan docs who will say that fat should be as low as it possibly can be. It should be 10%, or even potentially lower. So lots of different viewpoints. I just haven't seen a lot of evidence, and I saw Dr. Greger talking about this, just kind of asking this question, like, could we define a specifically optimal macronutrient ratio? And he didn't had not found any really conclusive evidence that we could either. So I say eat what you are attracted to, assuming it's whole foods. Kind of my answer to the first question. I forget her name. I think it was Nancy's question about should we have portion control? And I said no. You just with this type of food, whole plant-based foods, you probably don't need portion control. Almost everyone probably does not need it. At least that is my philosophy and Sid's philosophy. So by the same token, I would argue that almost everyone does not really need to think about their macronutrient ratios. Think instead about micronutrients. Make sure you're eating foods that are rich in micronutrients, which is vitamins, minerals, and all kinds of other phytonutrients and things that we don't even have names for. Eat that food, and you're going to be fine. And wherever the macronutrients end up is where they end up, and you're going to be fine. Now, as I said, like if you're going after elite performance in some sort of sport, then there might be diet philosophies that are specific to that sport that you might want to try to experiment with and just try out. But as I said, you find people in all different sports doing all different diets successfully. So I'm not even convinced that it matters for a given sport what your macronutrient profile is. So that's my take on that. I'm pretty sure Sid would just say he does not think it matters at all. I guess I've done enough of these with him to know what his answers would be for a lot of these. So we don't even need him on here. But good question, Lisa. And by the way, although we didn't really address, how you eat around your workouts, like you do want to pay attention to that. Eat the right foods around workouts. I don't want to go into all that now, but you can find it in lots of resources. There's plenty of stuff on nomeatathlete.com about that, in my books and other people's books about how do you eat around workouts. So look that up, and that is an area where I do kind of tend to focus more on that. So like even if most of the time my philosophy is just eat whole foods and eat what seems good, then that's fine. But like around workouts is one time when if I'm training for something seriously and I really do want to optimize recovery, then I will do things like in the 15 to 20 minutes following a workout, eat a very high carbohydrate meal. And an hour later or an hour and a half later, do more of a higher protein, like just more typical meal. Maybe it's a beans and rice. Maybe it's a vegan pizza type thing with whole grain. I don't know. But that is the stuff that has worked for me. And I do have some recommendations for how you should eat around workouts. And even in the Health Made Simple program, if you're in there, you will find some of those things kind of boiled down for athletes. So that is that. And that brings me to the final pre-submitted question, which I'll answer. And then if there aren't others, we'll just kind of end this early. But I hope people have questions here live, because that's really what these are for. That's the fun of these things. That's a ton of the value of these things, because then you can follow up if you don't understand or don't like my answer. So this final one we have right now that was pre-submitted is from Mary. She said, I was wondering if you could talk a little about seaweed. I know from one of your videos that Sid mentioned it had a lot of nutrients. Is there a certain kind that's better than others? Raw or roasted, nori, etc.? Thanks. Good. So good question. If you watch those videos, you probably saw us joking around with because Sid loves seaweed and I hate it. I can't stand the smell or taste of it. That fishy kind of stuff just has always I found it so gross. I mean, even when I eat meat and fish, seaweed itself just grossed me out. Like when I go to eat sushi and have to have it rolled up in the seaweed, I just never liked it, and I still don't. But I do recognize it has some good stuff in it. In fact, if you ate a ton of seaweed, and you do need to eat a ton, you can get a lot of iodine. Well, you don't need a ton for iodine. You can get your iodine from seaweed even if you eat normal amounts of seaweed. But things like DHA and EPA are found in fish, of course, but also in algae, which is where the fish mostly get it. They're really valuable omega-3s, and you can get it in seaweed. You just kind of need to eat very large quantities of seaweed to get it from those, which is why for most people I would recommend supplementing with DHA and EPA. But that's also a much longer conversation, because some people can convert ALA, which you can get from flax seeds and walnuts and lots of other normal plant-based food sources. And some people can convert that into DHA and EPA, which are these other types of omega-3s. But most people cannot do that, and you don't know if you can unless you get a blood test. So, or I guess a gene test could be a spit test, or any other type of DNA. But anyway, you may or may not need to supplement with that. It seems that most people do, and that's why I recommend you do. But anyway, that is getting off topic a little bit. Yeah, I mean, there's lots of good stuff. It's a vegetable like any other, and it's from the sea, so it has different stuff than you typically find in land vegetables. I am no aficionado in see what I did there? Aficionado in seaweed. But nori, of course, is the popular one. I'm just Googling here because I want to make sure that that I am accurate in saying that it is the one that is typically that I hear about in terms of iodine content. But I'm not finding that information very quickly here. So nori, of course, is the one you hear about all the time. Kombu, I often that's one I do use because I throw it into a pot of beans. If I'm making beans at home, then I will throw like a thumb-sized piece of kombu in there, which is just like a thicker piece of seaweed than those thin nori sheets typically are. And people say it helps like the digestive properties of the beans. I do it because I figure maybe some of the iodine and some of those nutrients just might get into the water and then into the beans, and that seems like a good thing. Plus, it contributes a little bit of flavor, not enough to be off-putting for me. So that is unfortunately all I really know about seaweed. I don't want to try to make up stuff. Wakame, I know that one that you see like those Asian salads in restaurants sometimes. Man, those are probably the only seaweeds I know of by name. But I'm sure there are countless varieties of them, and I imagine they, just like plants on the land, have all different types of nutrient profiles and things. you know, it's kind of like, or I would imagine, and Sid would be a good person to ask here because he's someone who likes seaweed a lot better than I do. My guess is like it's asking what's better, carrots or onions, and like one doctor will tell you this one's a lot better, and the other one will say this one is, and it depends what you're looking at. So you know, who knows if there's a certain best one. That whole superfood idea is a little bit crazy to me. I mean, I think we should just eat lots of whole, fresh foods. Some of them raw if possible. You did ask about raw and roasted. Unfortunately, I don't know. I know most of the nori sheets are like toasted, I believe. But here I am talking on and on about seafood, and I don't really know much about it. So I don't know the difference between raw and roasted. Maybe there are some that you can't do very well if they are cooked. And I would imagine like land vegetables, you also lose some nutrition when you cook them. So there's a little bit of a balance there where, you know, probably good to have some cooked, some raw. Okay, sorry I can't talk more about seaweed in any depth or with any intelligence, but I will ask Sid about that one next time. And hope that helps. So, good questions for the pre-submitted ones. Let's see. Nobody has mentioned a single live question, which is odd. It might be a world record. I don't know if we've ever done one of these things with no live questions coming in. Now and then, in the old days, we used to do them, and we didn't have many members or anything, so we would do every now and then we'd have one where there was just nobody showed up, and I guess those we had no questions. But this one we had actual people at. I can see them in the stats. I can see that there are people here watching and listening, just not asking questions, which is cool. You don't have to ask questions, but if you want to, it's a great opportunity because these afternoon sessions are not so crowded. So it's a good time. What can I talk about in the last minute or two while I wait for any questions to come in before I just decide I'm hanging it up? I don't know. I usually, so if Sid's on here, Doug's on here, we can usually find something fun to talk about and fill some time. But I don't know what I've got all my kids' artwork behind me. That is not my artwork, so don't be fooled. What else? Vegan Cruise is coming up for me. It's in I think it's in 21 days or so. So I'm going to be getting on the second half of the cruise if anybody's going. I get on, I think, in Barbados. Rather than the whole time, it's 10 days this year. Usually it's only 7. So that will be fun. I'll be giving a talk, the one about 7 foods worth eating every single day, which you may have some access to already, but it is fun to see it live, I hope. So anyway, I'm doing that soon. Looking forward to that. That is always a really nice reset for me. Just even having been on it now 4 times, I just always get re-inspired because there are so many good presenters on there, so many of these vegan doctors and other experts in the niche who are just on there, and it's just always very exciting. So I'm looking forward to that. Looking forward to that kind of jolt of motivation and coming home with some new tip that I'm going to do. But I have been focusing as the new year has happened, and I'm still a defender of New Year's. Is a great time to make changes and be inspired. And yeah, I think it's not worth fighting. A lot of people, I don't know. There's been like a backlash against New Year's resolutions, so now people think it is totally uncool. And like if anyone even mentions New Year's resolutions, they'll say, "Oh, well, I just can make change anytime. I don't need to wait for a certain day to tell me it's okay to make a change." So that's sort of the fashionable thing now. But I personally just like New Year's. I like the motivation that comes with it, and I embrace it. So anyway, I've been trying to just kind of double down on my healthy eating efforts because, like everybody else, I slide from time to time, and have really gotten back into a good habit of making lots of good food on the weekend, lots of big pots of beans that I make and then freeze the bags, making cabbage type, cruciferous vegetable type dishes just to make sure we have them on hand, making a lot of sauce, like pasta type sauces. Cooked tomatoes are an excellent food as far as like cancer prevention goes, so I make a ton of that stuff. Been eating and drinking, or I should say drinking smoothies consistently again with all the nuts and seeds in there I need. Always put walnuts, flax seeds, and berries in my smoothies because they are some of the best foods you can eat, and they are some of the hardest ones to work into your diet if you don't eat a smoothie. At least in my opinion, they've never really been, unless you're eating oatmeal or something, those foods don't naturally show up in your diet so much. So raw flax seeds, raw walnuts, and just frozen berries. So look, I look at that as a very, valuable part of my day. I also put my supplement in there, which is called Complement. It has B12, DHA, EPA, and D3. That's a company that I co-founded, so full disclosure there. But I use that in mine. And I've been putting a Brazil nut in my smoothie each day as well. just one, to get the selenium, which you don't really get from any other foods on a plant-based diet, and it is one you need. So it's worth adding a single Brazil nut per day to your diet. But look them up. Brazil nuts come with some added weird stuff like radioactivity, which is a shocking thing, but they have orders of magnitude higher amounts of naturally occurring radioactivity in them than other nuts. Apparently, it's still a negligible amount. But anyway, I think that's part of the reason you don't just eat hundreds of Brazil nuts at a time. You don't. Most people don't gorge on Brazil nuts or snack on Brazil nuts as they're like, eat 50 of these today nut. Maybe it's because maybe there's selenium toxicity if you take too much. I'm sure there is, but I don't know if that's an actual risk with Brazil nuts or not, and the amount that's in there. But anyway, that's why I work those into my diet. And I like having something like a smoothie, a sort of an anchor thing, because it's just not that easy for me to remember to eat flax seeds, walnuts, Brazil nuts, berries, a piece of turmeric if I'm kind of into that. I can have a list and I can have a checkbox thing like Gregor's sheet or app, but I often will get to the end of a day and be missing all these boxes and can't really get them in when it's nighttime and I've missed them already. So I like this idea of having certain meals that are kind of the anchors in your diet. And if those anchors sort of automatically, because of the way you've decided to make them, if they automatically give you these foods that are really valuable for eating each day, then you kind of eat those automatically without having to think of them. All I need to think about is drink a smoothie. I don't need to think about get these 5 different things that I tried to get in my smoothie, because that's how I make a smoothie. So anyway, I've been back on that and trying to do it with some consistency and lots of other good healthy changes. But anyway, that's probably enough. So I've given you 5 extra minutes here to get some questions in, and I have seen none. So we did set a record in having people attend but not ask any questions. Maybe it's Sid and his infectious personality that brings out the questions in people, but that's okay. I don't feel too badly, and I will, as I said, I will pass along the questions. The next time Sid is on, we will glance quickly, if I can remember to do this, and I'm pretty sure I will. We'll glance at these 4 pre-submitted questions today, and I'll just see if he has anything out of the ordinary to chime, or different from my perspective, to chime in on those topics. And that's it. So anyway, thank you for showing up. Not thank you for not asking questions, because I don't like setting that kind of record. But anyway, I appreciate that anyone shows up at all and listens, and hope you got something out of this. And I look forward to seeing you next time. All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye.